Hey guys, this is Fergal from Poker VIP. We are back for a 4-part series of a beginner's guide to cash game poker. So we're going to be playing some 4NL throughout this season. We're going to be playing over on the regular tables over on Betsafe Poker. I am going to be talking you through, we're not going to be using a HUD or anything fancy like that, we're just going to be talking you through just the basic fundamentals of what you need to be doing to beat low limit micro stakes cash games. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the action. So as you see, we have all of our tables up and running here now as we speak. So we've got 3 tables plus my lovely self down in the bottom right corner. So we've only just sat down at these tables. We've been playing just a little while while we're getting the video recording software set up. So we don't really have any particular reads or anything like that. We have literally just sat down. All of these players are new to us. So as the session progresses, hopefully we will pick up some reads that will be somewhat useful throughout. And sure, if not, hey, not the end of the world either. But as I said, so we're going to jump straight into the thick of things. It'll be following the same format. Anyone who is familiar with my previous videos, I'm just going to be playing my regular game. This is a live recorded session. It's not me kind of doing a voiceover for a pre-recorded session or anything like that. So I'll be talking through my decisions as they arise. And hopefully we will end the session with a nice little bit of profit. So, 10 jacks suited, we have under the gun, or sorry, from mid position should I say, because this guy is not in the blinds, my apologies. We open it up, that's a pretty standard open for me. Ace 9 we are going to be folding from under the gun, we'd be opening that from the cutoff or beyond. We're going to check back this board because it is quite scary down in the bottom left table. It doesn't really hit our range too well. Now, the only thing I would say is that most players at this level aren't really going to be thinking in the terms of ranges and so on. But my issue here is that he's going to have a lot of hands that include a diamond with them, and we don't have a diamond that he may be inclined to float one off on. And most of his hands that he's going to do that with are ahead of our jack high. So we're going to end up in a lot of situations where we may have to run a multi-street bluff on a very, very wet board, which I'm not a huge fan of doing. So it's okay just to, check fold on occasion, or just try to check back a flop and give up. You don't have to attack every single flop that you are in. Obviously, it is okay to give up some pots. If you're attacking every single pot, you're going to be extremely exploitable, and people in general, you are going to end up losing money with that kind of strategy. So throughout this game, we're going to be playing a reasonably tight but very aggressive strategy. When we are in, we are going to typically be raising. We are not going to be open limping or anything like that. Anytime we're bringing it in, we're typically going to be raising. We may be calling some open raises, but we are going to be 3-betting where we can over flat calls, essentially. And that'll be, in general, you want to be as aggressive as you can be in these games. Being extremely passive is not a winning strategy when it comes to no limit hold'em. And people in the micro stakes are super exploitable, but you need to be aggressive in order to exploit that in a lot of different spots. So, Queen 10 on the button in the top left table. We will be bringing this in for an open if it's folded to us, which it certainly is. So we're going to bring that in. And I'm just going to have a quick chat about my opening sizes. We're going to be utilizing a 3x opening strategy from all positions. So whether we are from under the gun, the mid position, cutoff, or the button of the small blind, if we're opening in an unraised pot, we are going to be making it 3x. So in the 4NL games, that's going to be 12 cents. We flop a gut shot over here, but more importantly, this board is going to hit our range harder than his. So we're going to have a bet here to see if we can just take this down. Unfortunately, he calls and he donks out here. I don't really like this line from him with anything really. It doesn't really make a ton of sense. We are going to have to fold, but if he has value there, he gave up our opportunity to bluff at it. If he has a hand like 2 pair, he may have been going for value from if I have a hand like ace jack or ace 10, for example, but I'm not a huge fan of that line that he just took. But we're not going to complain. We still have a pair over on the top right table. We just got to see a cheap flop. It's getting to be a reasonably scary board. We're going to throw out a bet now just to protect our hand a little bit. We're going to have the best hand here pretty frequently. And he's going to have some hands that he can call with, like overcards that have a spade, for example. He may want to peel and try to bink the flush. Or he may just fold, which, isn't a terrible result on this kind of board. We're not going to be looking to play a massive pot, obviously, with second pair on that kind of board. One thing that I really like about this side is that it kind of rabbit holes the cards that were due to come out. So, if you make a fold, you can see whether your flush would have hit or whatever. I just think that's kind of like a cool little feature that it adds in. We're going to raise it up here with our pocket 7s from the small blind. And as I said, I haven't really had much experience on this site. I did play for a little while just to get a feel for it before I started recording, and I have to say, overall, the standard of play seems to be exceptionally soft, and they have a very generous match deposit bonus of up to €1,000 as well, which is pretty damn nice. So if anyone has yet to make an account on it, I would highly recommend doing so and taking advantage. If you sign up through the affiliate link over at Poker VIP, you'll get 30% rake back as well, which is pretty damn generous. And I haven't been able to verify this yet, but my understanding is that the rake on these sites, on the likes of Betsafe, is quite lower in comparison to a lot of other sites. So it means that you'll be paying less rake and also getting a higher percentage of the back in comparison to a lot of other sites, which is, you know, pretty damn decent deal, as well as the match deposit bonus as well. So we have King Jack of the same suit. We are certainly not going to be folding. It's just a question of whether we want to put in a squeeze or not. I think we are just going to opt for the flat call. It's not a terrible spot to raise. If this guy had opened from, if the initial raiser was opening from the cutoff and the button had called, I'd definitely be squeezing. The fact that this was an under the gun open though made me more inclined just to check it back. Over at the top left table, we flopped a gut shot with a flush draw. We have turned an open ender. We're going to start betting this now. We're going to make it 8 cents to go, so bet 80% of the pot. And we're going to be opening it up with a 4 or 5 suited. So we take that down. We would have hit our straight in the end, but we're pretty happy just taking that down without a fight, to be perfectly honest. I mean, at the end of the day, we only had 10 high, despite the amount of equity that we had. Oh, timed out there by mistake. We were just going to fold anyway, though. So this is a very fun flop for us over on the top right table. So before we talk about that, we are going to just throw in a little 3-bet here. So I've made a beginner's guide over on Poker VIP, and one of the points that I talk about there, it's basically just a guide of tips that people often make, like the kinds of mistakes that people make at these limits and what sort of things you should be avoiding. One of the things that I go in and talk about is slow playing. And I'm not really an advocate of slow playing in general at these limits. There are some situations where it is merited, but in general, if you're slow playing, you're costing yourself an absolute ton of value in a lot of different spots. Now, in that situation, fair enough, we just got folds there, but there are also a lot of different hands they can have that will call. Like any pocket pair above the 6, like any 7s or above, will be certainly appealing at least once. Some people will be floating with just random overcards. Like people at these limits don't like to fold, so when you do flop a big hand, I'm a firm believer of just betting. I mean, if you've got the board completely crushed and, you know, if you've got pocket 7s on a 7-7 deuce board or something along those lines, then obviously you may need to slow play in those situations. But in general, I'm a huge advocate of just betting when you have strong value and just looking to build the pot as early as you can. Because if you miss out on even one street of value, that means that you miss an absolute ton of value, because the pot grows exponentially as you bet street by street. So what that means is you bet on the flop, you bet a small amount. You bet on the turn, you bet a larger amount. And then you bet on the river, it's an even larger amount, because the pot is bloated at that stage if you've bet all 3 streets. So you miss out on being able to make that large river bet if you miss out on even a single street of value. So when you do flop a hand like a straight on that kind of board, especially on a draw heavy board where, like, I mean, they can have higher diamonds, they can have all sorts of hands like that. We definitely want to be charging them as early as we possibly can. That'd be my take on it anyway. Now, as I said, obviously it didn't pan out in that particular example because we just got the folds through, but in general the premise does hold and it has treated me very well in the micro stakes games. Bet for value when you flop something big in general, as long as there's a reasonable amount of hands that your opponents can call with, of course. The 3 queen, obviously we're just going to be folding. It's a fairly trashy hand. We're not going to be going out of our way just to play pots. We are going to be playing, as I said, sticking to a highly regimented, tight but aggressive strategy. Queen tray from early position though is not going to be good enough to get involved with. Similarly, 9 deuce under the gun, we're not going to be doing anything there. We get a walk with 3-7 suited in the big blind over in the top right table. We are pretty damn happy with that, obviously. We would have been folding to any raise there, so any time that you get a walk in the big blind with the hand that you're going to be folding to a raise is obviously an absolute win. It's not a substantial pot, but those little walks, they do make a substantial difference in the long run. I mean, if you never get walks in the big blind, your win rate will be significantly lower than if you do from time to time. And from that particular position, I mean. 10-5 suited, we are going to bring this in for an open. Now, this is like pretty much the smack bottom of my range. I wouldn't argue against people saying that you should be folding this kind of hand, but in general, I want to be opening as many hands on the button as I possibly can. It's the most profitable position, and we have absolute position for the hand, so we want to be taking advantage of that fact. As I said, it is definitely on the looser side, but I think it's, you know, it's not going to be, at worst it's going to be a marginally losing play, and at best it will be a profitable play. So given that I have a substantial skill edge and position on these opponents post-flop, I do feel that this will be profitable for me. If people want to argue that they're going to fold that kind of hand, though, I wouldn't disagree. I mean, it's perfectly reasonable as well, especially if you're new and starting out and you want to kind of get to grips with post-flop play. We flop bottom pair with that hand anyway, and we take it down with a small bet on the flop, so we're not complaining about that. We pick up an extra few big blinds where other people may have just folded. We're going to have to top up soon. I don't have auto top up enabled on this site yet. We'll need to look into that. We'll throw in a 3-bet here first of all, though, and see if we can avoid having to do that. And we're going to be opening up the 9 at the ace-9 offsuit from the mid position. Mid position or cutoff would be around where I start opening all ace-x. This will be a fold from under the gun. So we flop middle pair with a decent kicker. And over with the 7s, this guy has decided to check back. We should have the best hand pretty frequently here, I think. So we're going to put in a really small bet here, try to get paid by his ace highs, basically. And also, I mean, he's going to have a decent amount of equity regardless. So if we just take this down, it's not a terrible result either. This is a really, really bad card for us. We're not happy about this at all. If he bets, we are going to fold. The flush draw gets there, and his ace-x that we get there that we were trying to get value from have also gotten there. So unfortunately, this is one of the worst cards in the deck for us. So we're going to have to fold. We're going to have to top up some chips as well. And with our pair of 9s over here, I think we're going to put in a really small tilting bet here. We're just going to min bet it and see if we can induce a weird bluff raise from a hand with 0 equity, basically. I found these kinds of lines can sometimes work at these limits where people just kind of spaz out. We get paid by a worse hand, which is also a fine result, but what we were going for there was him not wanting to fold to the min raise and just kind of spazzing out and putting in a bluff raise with, you know, random queen high or jack high kind of hand. We weren't going to be folding, obviously. And we have the ace and the king, which is obviously going to be an open from any position. Now, this is a board where we're unlikely to be getting 3 streets of value from many worse hands. So we are going to be, despite having top pair, top kicker, we're going to be playing this somewhat cautiously because this guy will have a very decent number of kind of 2-pair combos, some straights like hands like ace jack and so on, maybe jack 9 suited, as well as a ton of open enders like jack x with a pair as well. So it's not a hand that we're going to be looking to go absolutely bonkers and play for stacks or anything like that. We did start off with a flop bet to start getting paid a little bit and just to define his range a little bit as well. But as I said, it wasn't going to be a hand where we were going to be looking to play for stacks or anything like that. And the top left table, I'm not sure what happened. I think I timed out. I'm not sure why I haven't been dealt back in yet. Is everyone sitting out? It's potentially we may have to get a new table, but that's not a big deal if we do. We'll give it a second and see if it comes back anyway. See if the player sits back in. King 8, we are gonna, I know this looks a little bit loose, but in general, someone who is limping like this is going to be an extremely bad player. That's another thing I talk about over on my thread over on Poker VIP. Just don't limp. It's a sign of a losing player in general. It's passive, it's not good. I mean, this guy just limp folds as well, which, I mean, he's just giving away a big blind there, essentially. Sometimes he's going to get to see a cheap flop, but I mean, it's not something that you should be doing, so I wouldn't be making a habit of it. If somebody limps behind you, you should be ISOing them quite wide. And if somebody open raises, you can certainly flat call in those situations, but if you're the first to put money in the pot voluntarily, I do not recommend limping ever. We're going to be folding the queen 9 suited. Jack 5, it's only a min raise, but it comes from under the gun. We are going to have to fold our hand here, unfortunately. Now, I'm not sure why my chips didn't top up there. We'll try again. And the 8-10 suited, this is a strong contender to be playing as a 3-bet bluff from the small blind if there is a late position opener. So Prince min raises, so we are going to go ahead and use this hand as a 3-bet bluff. So we're going to bump it up to 32 cent over his 8 cent raise. Red looked the player to our left overcalls, which is definitely concerning for me. This board is not the best for us, but it's certainly not the worst either. I mean, this guy isn't necessarily limited to ace X or anything like that, and he's obviously going to be afraid if he has like a pair like pocket 7s, 8s, 9s, those types of hands. So what we're going to do is we are going to fire out a bet and see if we can just take this down. It's unlikely that we're going to fire multiple streets here, to be perfectly honest. We do pick up a gut shot, which is quite nice. So we do get called, unfortunately, as well on the flop, but hey, we're going to check. The 4 rolls off. I mean, I don't think it's going to be it's going to be in my interest to bet here. One of the things that, again, this is something I talk about during my my thread over on Poker VIP, is that people really don't kind of press for value thinly enough. So I mean, this guy probably should be betting a lot of his ace X, but he probably won't be. So he's happy just to check it down and try to induce bluffs and so on. So I'm gonna go ahead and just check on the river as well, because when he does check back the turn, I think he will be checking back an absolute ton of ace X that he called the flop with. Now, some draws did miss, so there is some merit to bluffing this river, but I think I prefer just going ahead and check folding, just playing the straightforward line. It is unfortunate, obviously, when we get caught out like that, but, you know, if you're not getting caught out in bluffs, you're not bluffing enough. That's the way I look at it. From time to time, I mean, of course, if you're getting caught out non-stop, you're probably bluffing a little bit too much. But, you know, you have to be willing to make some plays like that now. I mean, it's not something that you should be making a habit of doing, you know, every single hand or anything close to it. But if you pick your spots well, those kinds of situations will arise very frequently where you can turn quite a nice profit at it. It's just unfortunate that time it did not work out. So we're going to be opening the 10 and the jack from the cutoff. We flop top pair, which is a perfectly reasonable holding. We're going to be betting this for value. And we're just going to fold the king 4 to the blind versus blind raise. So we're going to bet 15 cent into 25 cent. Let's see if Tohutu has a hand that he wants to stick around with. We pick up 2 pair now, so the 10 jack wasn't going to be a hand that I was likely to look for 3 streets of value with, because it's kind of hard to get paid for 3 streets by worse. But now that we have improved 2 pair, I mean, if he has a hand like ace jack, for example, he's likely to pay us 3 streets, and we do beat that now. So we are going to look for 3 streets now, unless there is a particularly bad river card. Like a 9 would be quite bad, for example. The 7 wouldn't have been great for us, so, you know, maybe we would have opted to check back, or certainly bet smaller than we would have on a complete blank on the river. But he folds anyway, so that makes up our mind for us. We don't have any decisions to be making. And the 6-5 offsuit under the gun, or from mid position rather, is definitely going to be a fold as well. So we have queen 6, blind versus blind. We are going to go ahead and open this for steal. Generally, people overfold in this dynamic, so we can get away with raising very, very wide blind versus blind and expect a very reasonable number of folds. Like queen 6, it's not like I'm ecstatic to be raising it or anything like that. It's definitely on the weaker side of things, but I think it's going to be a perfectly fine hand to be raising in that dynamic when people are overfolding. And the 10-8 suited is definitely going to be an open from the button as well. So we flop, as is the 7-8 suited. So we flop a flush draw with overcards to the board, which is quite an acceptable hand. So we are going to start this off with a bet. So again, we're going to go 15 cent into 25 cent. Let's see if we can either take this down or get there on the turn. So we get called. We improve to a pair, which is quite nice. We are going to bet again, this time more so for value than as a semi-bluff. If he has a hand like 4x or anything like that, or if he is like it's possible he has a better flush draw on those types of hands, as well as just some random overcards that he decided to float, which is, you know, definitely possible to happen at these limits. So we're going to go ahead, bet 30 cent in an attempt to get called again by worse. And we have the pocket rockets over on the top left table, which is quite exciting. So we're going to bring this in for a raise. So Muram is still thinking. He decides to fold. The river would have been an 8 as well, so we would have had the nut full house on the river. And unfortunately no action with the aces, but hey. These things are always going to happen. You're not always going to get action when you get dealt big hands, unfortunately. I timed out over here by mistake, so after missing our blinds, which is kind of annoying. We'll get dealt in now in a second. So I had a lot going on at the other table, so I got a little bit distracted. So we have on all tables, we have perfectly playable hands. So we are going to opt to 3-bet the 9 jacks suited. So let's bump that up to 26 cent. We're going to be... Okay, so the button has decided to call us here. If this guy hadn't called, I would be c-betting this board. When this guy's around here, though, his range is a bit of a mystery to me. It's kind of a strange spot for him to be overcalling. So with the 8-9 suited, we flop well. We have flush draws and straight draws. We're going to just fold the Jack-9 when this guy leads on the ace. So Tiger Paper decides to come along with a call. So any 6 gives us the nut straight, any spade gives us a flush. We are going to bet this again. So bet serves two purposes. It prevents him from betting a larger amount than we're betting now if he has a queen, and it's unlikely that he's going to want to be raising much of his queen X. We're going to fold out some better hands. Like if he has a hand like 7x, for example, he may opt to fold it. And it also builds the pot when, you know, it also builds the pot for when we do hit, we can make a really, really large bet now in the river. Unfortunately, we brick off. So we're just going to check and give up. When he calls 2 streets, I think it's quite likely that he has a queen. And I think trying to bluff him off a queen is going to be a recipe for disaster. Trying to get micro-stakes players to fold a hand like top pair does not typically end well. So you really need to pick your spots when you're looking to bluff and attack ranges that, you know, boards that aren't particularly good for your opponent's ranges. So if you think they're very top pair heavy, generally speaking, it's not going to be a good idea to bluff unless you've got some solid evidence to indicate that they are capable of laying down a top pair type hand, which as it stands right now, we don't have that kind of information. It's just unfortunately that we whipped all of our outs though. So this guy 3-bets us with the king 5 suited. We are just going to let him have this one, sir. It's yours, it's yours. We are going to be opening the ace jack suited though. And queen jack offsuit, when there is a limp, a raise, and a call, this hand shrivels up pretty damn quickly. It has some potential, some post-flop potential, but keep in mind that we're going to be out of position for the entire hand. And it's just going to be quite tricky to play that profitably when we're out of position in a multi-way pot. There's just not enough really good flops for us. With the king 10-7 board, we have a good shot to the nuts and we have the backdoor flush draw as well. So we are going to fire once here to see if we can just take this down. I don't like check folding and I don't like check calling, so that just leaves c-betting ourselves. Or check raising as a semi-bluff, but more so as a bluff. I am just a firm advocate there, just firing a one and done bet. People do tend to fold this decent number to c-bets, especially on the kind of ace high and king high boards, so they're going to behave relatively honestly, basically. So if he has a king, he's going to be sticking around. If he doesn't, he's going to be folding a decent part of the rest of his range. So I think that is just a solid line to be taken. The ace 7 suited is going to be a fold versus an under the gun open. This obviously would have been a pretty okay flop for us, but again, in a 3-handed board, ace 7 is going to be in a situation where you're going to be struggling to get paid when you have the best hand, and reverse implied odds work quite heavily against you. If he has a better ace, it's going to be difficult for us to get away from our hand cheaply as well. So you always have to think about those kinds of situations when you are looking at choosing which hands that you want to play. Think about kind of what type of boards are good and bad for you, like how many, and you know, in that situation, like ace 7 has severe domination issues where, you know, a lot of people are going to be opening all stronger ace X there. So if you do flop top pair, it's still not going to be an amazingly good situation for you. We're going to be dropping in a 3-bet over here. So we're going to be binking it up to 40 cent over this min raise and call. So the big blind folds, Prince folds, and hopefully Dolph folds as well. If he doesn't, we'll have to go to plan B and improve on the flop, ideally. So he's thinking about it, and when generally when people tank like this, I find they're usually going to fold, so they just want to have a think about it before they do. I think it's pretty unlikely that he tank calls them. So we have the ace and the 10 suited. Yeah, he goes ahead and folds. We're going to be opening ace 10 suited from the button, and 10 jack, if it's folded around to us, we are going to be opening it. If there's any raise before us, we're going to be folding the 10 jack, but we are probably going to continue with the ace 10 suited. We are indeed. We're going to fire out a 3-bet here and play a bloated pot in position with the hand that has the potential to flop quite well. We get 4-bet, which is very unfortunate. In general, we don't tend to peel 4-bets too wide at all. We're just going to go ahead and fold the ace-10 suited. People don't really tend to have a 4-bet bluff range kind of in the lower limit games. So when he does go ahead and 4-bet, our hand is going to be pretty toast pretty quickly. But the reason that we chose to 3-bet that kind of hand is that a lot of good things can happen. So we put him under a lot of pressure with all of his under pairs, so his hands like 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s, those types of hands. We put him under a lot of pressure there. If he has a hand like ace-king and he decides to 4-bet, it defines his hand quite well for us. So if we just flat call and the board comes, ace-high, it puts us under a lot of stressful situations. And if he does have a hand like ace-king, ace-queen, ace-jack that he decides just to call the 3-bet, we're going to be able to bluff him off those kinds of hands quite frequently as well. So there's a lot of upsides to kind of playing a reasonably wide 3-betting strategy. Once you're comfortable playing in those pots post-flop, which I certainly am, we are going to be bumping it up here in a limped pot. In general, we don't really allow for limped pots when we can avoid it. When we have any sort of reasonable holding, so like any sort of ace there is definitely going to be good enough to put in a squeeze there. And we take down the pot without a fight, which is an absolutely fine result for us. Same again, we're going to be ISOing this limper, the Desert Cobra fella. This is a reasonably disconnected board. It's not a board that I'm in love with c-betting, but he's gonna have missed it often enough that I think we can fire a profitable single bet. And there are some cards that we'll decide to barrel, but we take that one down without a fight, which is fine by us. Eight 4 on the button. We opened the button very, very wide, but this is going to be just a little bit too weak in my opinion. The Queen 10 suited, we are going to be bringing this in. We're going to ISO our limping friend Prince over here. So he limps, we're going to make it 16 cent. So this, like, you've noticed that I've been doing this a fair bit this session. It serves two things. Like, it gets us heads up against a weaker player quite often. What can happen there is, he's just limp folding, which we pick up an extra couple of big blinds with minimal risk. But what we're really trying to do is, hopefully he'll call, and we're going to assume he's going to be a fairly weak player who's playing out of position against us, and we have a hand that can flop quite well quite often. So all of those things make for a very, very profitable situation from us. So what we're really trying to do is get heads up in position against players that we think are going to be playing quite badly post-flop. And anyone who's limping is a strong candidate for that. So that's kind of why we're ISOing quite wide in these situations. Pretty fun flop for us over on the top right table, so we're going to start this off with a bet. Going to make it 18 into 27, so 2/3 pop. Snap folds, unfortunately. There has not been a lot of action this so far this session. It has been fairly tame in terms of the pot sizes, but I feel that I feel we've played quite well. We haven't gotten in any kind of particularly good spots, but we have been playing a solid fundamental game. And obviously when you're playing poker, these kinds of situations will come up where you're playing for for half an hour, for an hour, and not a huge amount happens, but it is important to still be able to kind of maintain your focus, play a correct game, play your regular game. Don't get tilted by the way the deck cards are falling, essentially. And just keep at it and keep plugging around, and the results will come as long as you're playing a good game. So this guy's just min betting. I mean, we can't fold with 2 overcards to min bets essentially. I mean, King High has a very minor amount of showdown value. I mean, with the min bet, we're just going to call down. I want to see what he has here. He's pocket jacks, so fair enough. In that situation, he happens to extract maximum value from us. But we now know what he is, like the kinds of hands that he is min betting. So like he's a short stacker and he's not 3-betting pocket jacks pre-flop, which is absolutely atrocious in my opinion. I do not think that is the correct way to be playing. Because to be honest, I was probably going to call a 3-bet there. But he just has, and then only min betting, like he's going to miss out on a lot of value from a lot of hands where I can pay him off with stronger bet sizes. So against that exact hand that I had, he got max value, but I mean at the end of the day he only got 3 big blinds, so you know, there's a lot to be said for just betting a normal amount and hoping that your opponent can pay you off rather than trying to get, like, you know, exceptionally thin value from ace highs and king highs, that type of thing. So we've got pocket queens versus black spot, who's opened under the gun. We are going to be bringing this in for a 3-bet. And that's going to bring this session to an end pretty soon. So this session will round it off. And so we are going to bink this up to 42 cent over the initial raises. Obviously we would like to get some action with the pocket queens. 2 folds in the blinds, so back around to our under the gun friend. So he is thinking about it, which is promising, but as I mentioned earlier on, when people do kind of go into the tank like this, they're going to be folding a decent amount. Now this guy comes back over the top. So we have 2 decisions now. I mean, we're not folding our hand. If he has aces or kings, then so be it. It's just a case of whether we want to just get it in now or whether we want to call and get it in on safe flops. I think we're going to call and then get it in on non-ace or king high flops, essentially. So we've got just about pot left behind, just under pot, or just over pot rather. So if, as I said, if we're against aces or kings here, which, you know, he 4-bet from under the gun, it's definitely possible that we are. I'm not sure what percentage of the time we're going to be against those hands at these kinds of limits in these games, because I'm not all that familiar with them. But, you know, if we are, we're destined to lose a decent sized pot, especially when we don't have quite 100 big blinds ourselves because we don't have auto top up on. So what we're going to do now is bet an amount to try to encourage him to jam over us with hands like ace highs and so on, if he's ever going to plan to do that. And you have to remember, like, I mean, even if he's a hand like ace king, let's say, if we get it all in pre-flop against a hand like ace king, it's not exactly like an amazing result for us. It's going to be marginally profitable, but it's not like we have a substantial range advantage edge over a hand like ace king. So he just goes ahead and folds. So we take down a pot to round out the session. We'll take that. So this has been part 1, as I said, guys. We're going to be back for part 2 very, very soon. I hope you enjoyed it. As I said, I know it wasn't the most exciting run in the terms of the pot sizes or anything like that, but hopefully you learned a little bit in terms of how you should be approaching the micro stakes games. Make sure to keep watching throughout for parts 2, 3, 4, and 4. Hopefully they will have a little bit more substantial size pots in them, but, you know, we'll be playing the same kind of game throughout, and hopefully we will keep running up those stacks. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I'll chat to you soon.